bet everybody, since I heard there's going to be a promotional process, I bet everybody that's going to compete is in it.
I think everybody in here doesn't pass that part.
Oh, well. Yeah. I think everybody here knows why we have been here since Sunday, but I've already told the chief this, and Mr. Manager, I'll share it with you. You should be very proud that you have the organization that you have. You know, sometimes it takes an outsider to come in and look at you and tell you that, for you to feel good about yourself. But I've done so many of these, I can't give you the number. But if I didn't feel like you're a good organization, I'd go through the routine here and never tell you that. But you got a good organization. And an organization is made up of good people. And I think you have good people here. You know, you've got something that I wished I had had in a 600-person police department. You got a family. And you take care, I sense that you take care of each other. And that's important. You know, I had 5 police departments. I had 3 precincts, and narcotics and organized crime was off-site, and another group was off-site. So I had 5 little police departments. Yeah, they really cared about each other, and they were a great organization. But you have something here that not every organization has. You're not small, and you're not big and huge. You're at the right size where everybody has the opportunity to know each other. But you also have the opportunity in a jurisdiction like this to know your people. And the people have the opportunity to know you. And through the interviews that we had and from the people that we've heard, I sense that your relationship and your interaction with the community is very good. The feedback that we have heard has been good. And I know that there are people out there that don't trust you and don't like you, and we did not hear from them. But you know, I've gone to places in the public hearing be full of those people that had negative comments. And maybe you locked them all up that night, but we did not hear from them. But this process was a little bit different than we do in other places because your gold standard assessment. Well, number 1, gold means pretty good. If you had not had previous good on-sites, you would not qualify for a gold standard because we didn't look at every piece of paper, but I can tell you this, every one of these procedures I read. Now, I'm an old guy. I had them on a computer, but poor Nancy had to print them out for me because I like to touch and write on them. I can't do that on the computer, but I read them in the last 4 days to make sure that you were in compliance with them because they are the high liability areas. And part of this process is to protect the city. And I was telling you, the last time I was this close to a camera, I was taking depositions, lost it, and it doesn't feel good. Well, at that deposition, I talked about the CALEA process because we had shot and killed somebody, and we had dotted the I's and crossed the T's because we were accredited. We did what we were supposed to do from policy and procedure. We did what we were supposed to do from hiring and training and early warning and all of that, which most of you don't even think about until this CALEA process comes around. But the processes of CALEA are happening on a daily basis. Now, get a few of the little things out of the way. There are 484 standards. Now, I'll have a chart in my final report, and all mandatory standards you have to be in compliance with. And there, you had 295 mandatory standards, you're in compliance with all of them. In years past, there were an area called file maintenance and applied discretion. File maintenance was, if we were looking at a file and you had the information but it wasn't in the file, and now all this is powered in the computer, we would ask you to put it in, and that's file maintenance. We didn't have any of that. We had a few little things we asked for, but was nothing really pertinent to the standard. The applied discretion was, if we came in and your directive, your policy did not cover all the bullets, and some of them have 5, 6, 7, 8 bullets, and you didn't cover all the bullets, we would say, you need to rewrite your policy to come into compliance. And that would be an applied discretion. Well, they don't have those terms anymore. And by the way, you didn't have any of those anyway. The term is standard issues. And if there was an issue that was a critical issue, we've already addressed one, and it was an evidence issue. And as simple as it is, we addressed it because we want you to be that perfect agency. And it was a vehicle used in something a long time ago, sitting downstairs, but it wasn't in a fenced-in area. But it was also in your evidence inventory. Therefore, it had to be secured. So, quick fix. We had a couple options. Put it in the fence, which we had room for it. Or if not, we would have made you build a fence before we left, but you would have been in non-compliance. But that's why we come. It's not here to hurt you, it's to help you. We're not going to even mention that as being an issue that we address because it hadn't been there for as long as we thought it had been there. It wasn't mentioned in the previous report. See, we read the previous report before we get here. But anyway, it's taken care of. No issue there as far as I'm concerned. There are other mandatory standards that you pretty much, depending on your agency size, have to come in compliance with, and you did. There were 76 of those. You took 8 20%ers. A 20%er is something that you could be doing. You don't have to do it. So you put it in a category, manpower allocation. It's pretty tough to come in compliance with, so you take it as a 20%er. Or we might have found something that was an optional standard that you weren't doing 100%. And I'll give you an example. It's physical fitness. One of the bullets you have to have a physical fitness certified instructor, trainer, etc. Y'all don't have that. But you'll have a very good physical fitness plan. So I suggest you put it in 20% because there's one bullet you don't come in compliance with. And that's normally a costly bullet of hiring somebody to do that. And then you had 105 standards that did not apply to your agency, and that was like courthouse security, detention, jail, things like that. We reviewed 51 critical files off-site before we got here, and since we've been here, other than reading, we have been interviewing people. I see a few faces in the room that we've had the opportunity to interview. There's an issue in the report that has to do with future performance issues. You had one of these in the previous on-site. We're saying that you don't have any for the future on-site. And by the way, the process changes. After we leave here, within a year, a person with clear will contact the agency, go into your Power DMS, and look at a random number of standards to see if you're in compliance. And they will do that every year for 4 years. And the next time, one person will come in and probably stay 2 days, but they're here to physically check on you. So the process is changing. It used to be every 3 years we would come in. There are a number of charts. And Nancy knows these charts. As well as Milford. And by the way, thank the staff for all your support. I should have said that first, but I know you're anxious when we get here. You can't wait to get us to the airport this afternoon. But thank you. You've done a lot of hard work. Because we're pretty demanding when we come in, and we don't mean to be. These are the charts. Demographics, traffic warnings and citations, bias-based profile policing complaints, your numbers of uses of force, your formal grievances, personnel actions, sworn officer selection activity, and that's basically recruitment and hiring, promotions, vehicle pursuits, complaints from internal affairs, and year-end crime stats. I actually was on the committee. Years ago, the report was about 58 pages, and it was redundant and said the same thing over and over, and we had no charts. I was on a committee to help recommend that these charts, because stop and think of the charts I just mentioned. They're all the critical issues. What is the number one critical issue facing us today that we hear about every week?
Use of force.
Use of force. It's being looked at from A to Z across the country. You can even see where PERF and ICP are a little bit different lines in regards to it. So when I come into an agency, I look at all the critical issues because I want to protect this guy here. I've been there. But I also want to protect you. You don't want to be sued. You want to have good policy and procedure. And you take this for granted. There are police agencies still out there that don't have a policy on domestic violence. They don't have a good policy on use of force. They don't have a pursuit policy. And you know when they do stupid stuff, who suffers? Who suffers? All the good agencies suffer. And things change. Look at the taser issue in Pinehurst. A federal judge ruled on that, which had a significant change in the use of the taser weapon. I'll also mention, as I'm talking, some areas, Chief, that you're probably going to get some questions on by the commissioners because of some of the numbers. The first one is demographics. They're going to look at, I'll use an example. Your available workforce, which is the county, has 73% Caucasian, 12% African American, 11% Hispanic, and 3% other. If you're not, your agency's demographics are not in the same category, you're probably going to get a question in regards to it. And you're a little bit low in a couple areas. And another area that they would be looking at from that perspective is hiring and your promotions. And the reason behind that is they want our organizations to reflect basically the community. When it comes to bias-based policing, and I don't think you had any. You didn't have any of those complaints. They also look at your traffic stops and your traffic stops in comparison to statistics. And you're pretty good there. So you're not going to have, should not have any issues there. Use of force. For an agency your size, you don't have a lot of uses of force. And I was kind of, before I got here, I said, golly, over 3 years you've had 7 shootings. Well, I understand once I got here that when you point the weapon at somebody, that's a use of force. That's not the case across the country. So after being told that, my concern went away a little bit. Actually, you showed a decline in the use of the taser. It's almost like you hung the baton up since you got the taser. Weaponless is probably the most, but we know what weaponless is. It's when you put your hands on someone and have to use force to arrest them. You only had 3 grievances. If you would have seen mine, it would probably shock you because every time I disciplined someone, if they grieved, it was a grievance. If they appealed, it was a grievance. And the only 3 that you had, I think, had to do with discipline. Your personnel actions were low for an agency of this size. And you don't do a lot of hiring, so your numbers are somewhat small there. But we also look at those percentages from the demographics on how you're meeting it. Promotions, you only promoted in 2014, and we reviewed the policy, reviewed your process, and there were no areas there. And then Virgil has the other standards pertaining to it. On the public hearing, you had 11 speakers. Many of you were there. All the speakers were very positive. We had a phone-in session for 2 hours. We got 8 phone calls, and they were all positive. We've interviewed a lot of people external to the agency. Principal of the school, business person. I interviewed the manager, fire chief, to get a feeling from an external standpoint about the agency, and all the comments were very positive. These are the words that I heard from people to describe you. And by the way, these are the questions that when I interview people external to the agency, these are the questions I ask. Are they trusted in the community? Is the Monroe Police Department trusted in the community? Are they trusted with young people? Do they listen? And I got all positive comments back there. What are the critical issues? Or what is the critical issue facing the organization in the next couple of years? And I did an interview with the chief and some other members of the staff to get a feeling of what are the issues that you got to face, and also to look at your strategic plan to see if you're ready or prepared to face those issues. Another question is, give me one word that describes the Monroe Police Department. And these are some of the words I heard. Professional, cooperation, teamwork, interaction, customer service, relationship, for us, with us, community. So those were a few keywords that I heard. I have a question on leadership. How is the leadership? Is the leadership in touch with the community? Is the leadership in touch with government? Is the leadership in touch with the organization? How do they communicate with the community? Do you just sit in headquarters? Or are there programs where the police officers, sergeants, the lieutenants, the captains, the chief, interacting with the community? Would you recommend them for accreditation? And all the comments I got using many of these questions were positive. These were the areas that I had. I don't know how many chapters there are, but they go up to 84. They're not exactly 84 chapters. But the ones that I had began with the use of force. And if you did not have a good use of force policy that said all the right things, I would have had to rewrite it. That's how critical that is. And a critical word is imminent in use of force today. And as we discussed earlier, this use of force thing is going to change. It's changed a heck of a lot in my 45 years of policing, but it's at a critical point right now. I remember as a young cop, they used to say, time is on your side. Back up. And then I went to the area where we charged everything. We forgot about time, and we were rushing into things. But now we're coming back around. So I looked at use of force. And by the way, in case I forget it, you got an outstanding range here. A nice classroom, an outstanding range. That sends a message to me, you're doing all the right things from a use of force standpoint. And that's critical. Because anybody here been sued in policing? A couple of you? Is it nice? Do you like taking depositions and sitting in front of a federal judge? No. But every time we are sued for use of force, that's going to happen. So it's such a high liability. We've got to be conscious of it. And I looked at it critically, and I think you're doing all the right things from a use of force standpoint. I again looked at the bias-based area and the traffic stops. I looked at grievance. I looked at discipline. I looked at your recruitment plan. Now, I shared something with the chief, and I'll share it with you. You have a good recruitment plan, but the way that I guess training is set up in North Carolina, you're really not recruiting. You're not recruiting. People are coming to you. Now, there are other ways, and we discussed it, to deal with that issue. But you're pretty much an agency that you're looking at certified people or lateral entry. So I use this example, and I used it to the chief. I just got out of college, 4-year degree. I want to work for Monroe, but I'm not certified. And I just got out of college. I want a job. But the system as it exists tells me I've got to go to a community college and pay for it to get a job with the department I want to go to. So I can't get on your department. So you're really not recruiting, although you have a good recruitment plan, because people are coming to you. Selection, and I kind of just discussed that. Training. It's obvious to me that training is a priority in the department. I got that from you. I got that from the lieutenant. A good field training program. Excellent firearms program. And I sense that you're doing all the right things. I've never been to an agency this size that had as many people as you have that have been to the FBI National Academy. So that tells me that you're committed not only to the in-service training and the specialized training, but you're interested in the command level training such as the FBI Academy. Your promotions, I know you're getting ready to go through a promotional process. All of your policy and procedures are good there. And I also looked at evaluations. I went on a ride along one night to an agency in South Carolina, not too far from here. And I was riding with the lieutenant, and I said, "When's the last time you got evaluated?" He said, "Oh, about 3 years ago." You know what the directive said? Annually. So the next day, the agency is evaluating. Probably they were doing it for everybody, sergeant and below, but they weren't doing it up the chain. So the next day, the sheriff had everybody getting evaluated. Evaluations are important. And I know here, like in most places, they're controlled by HR in the city. So those were pretty much the standards that I had. High, and normally the team leader will take the real high liability areas. Virgil had the rest.
Thank you, Jim. I guess I'll get up and stand around, run around and walk too. First of all, I certainly want to thank everybody for your hospitality. I keep hearing the thing about family. Well, I felt like I was engulfed in a big hug this week and welcomed as part of your family. And so I really appreciate that. Another thing, I don't think I have ever been able to thank the fire chief of a place that I go for their hospitality, but I'm going to have to thank the fire chief here because he welcomed us into his conference room where we kind of, I guess, booted him out for a few days. So I want to thank you for your hospitality as well, Chief.
We're glad to have you.
Some of the things that I want to talk with you about, certainly, every time that I came in contact with somebody in your department, they were welcoming, they were courteous, they were very professional in their contact with us, and everybody that we've talked to, particularly outside the agency, as Jim was saying, those were some of the words that we certainly heard in relation to how y'all treated the public here. As Jim was saying, I had most of the standards that dealt with the operational and support parts or aspects of the police department. So I'm just going to just real briefly touch on a few highlights on that. As far as the patrol function goes, once again, every time that I heard people talking, particularly about the patrol officers, they were talking about how compassionate they are. We heard numerous stories about how officers might even hold their hand or hug somebody that was having an issue or a situation or in distress. So certainly your patrol officers out there working with people day in and day out are well respected among the folks in the community. You're working the 12-hour shifts, I know. A number of the officers that I talked to said they actually like that. I've never worked a 12-hour shift. Well, I can't say that when I'm working in the office like that, because sometimes those are 12-hour days. But I've never had to work a 12-hour shift in patrol. The longest I've ever worked is 9.5, but it would seem like that 2 or 3 extra hours would be a drag as far as trying to get through the day. But several of the officers that I was able to talk to said they really liked that 12-hour shift. Now, I was talking to the captain a little bit earlier today, and we were talking about what happens at a shift change. You know, if there's a call that comes out right at the end of the shift, what kind of overlap do you have to address the issue of people not having to work overtime? So we talked a little bit about that. And he even had expressed the thought that he's been looking at that for the last few weeks and trying to come up with some solutions to help with that overlap right at shift change. So I encourage the captain to keep on kind of looking at that and come up with some ideas on that to get some relief there. On criminal investigations, you have a very good case management system. I talked with the lieutenant there the other day about that and how that's done. We looked at the interview room. You got a nice interview room, a little small, but it certainly meets the standards. One issue that he had was, you know, it's a facility issue. There's not a lot you can do about it, but probably the paper-thin walls, he had a little bit of concern about suspects being able to hear what's going on outside that room as an interview or interrogation's in progress. Chief, the only thing I know to fix that, you already know what that is. It's a new facility.
Could you say that one more time?
New facility.
Look at the camera.
Yeah, look at the camera.
Is there an echo?
Also, I'll talk to the lieutenant a little bit about cold cases. I think you got somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 15 that are open right now. I know there's a review process in that occurs 2 or 3 times a year to see if there's any more information that comes out on those types of cases. I know he's also kind of looking at maybe at some point in the future getting somebody that's at least somewhat dedicated to looking at cold cases and trying to get some of those closed out. Also along kind of the lines of criminal investigations, we looked at narcotics, and particularly along narcotics talked about the confidential funds, and you got very good policies set up to handle confidential funds as well as maintaining strict accountability for those funds. Let's talk just a little bit about juveniles, how y'all work with juveniles and your community involvement. Now I'm here to tell you, this is where y'all really do shine. Almost everybody I talked to, bar none, talked about the strong community involvement that you have, particularly with juveniles. You've got, well, I'll just go through some. You got the PAL program. I talked with the Sarge the other day about that and the strengths with that. As well as you don't hear very often about cops going out and picking kids up and taking them to this event or that event, or going and actually feeding them. You know, I've never really heard about that type of activities till I got here, so I applaud you on that. The SROs working with the schools, we heard good things about that, as well as I spoke with a lady yesterday about the back to school bash that's been going on for the last 2 or 3 years, and how the department's involved with that, as well as the mentoring programs that you have both through PAL and through the PASS program. So I was just really impressed with the amount of community outreach you have, particularly with the kids in the community. Your community services unit over on Moore Street, while I understand y'all would like to get things pulled together, and some different units are living in houses or apartments and community or housing developments. One thing that really stood out as far as the community services unit goes was the fact that they are in a housing development, and the neighbors right around where that office is really seems to like the police presence that brings along. So while there might be some things that we may not like about being out and having a decentralized thing, particularly in an old house or apartment, you got to also kind of look at the plus side of that too, because that does actually get you out in the community. There were a number of places where I visited where it was obvious you had a really good, strong presence within the community. I visited your PIO, talked a little bit about public information. He was really enthusiastic about his ability to provide some services for the police department. He's spread kind of thin because he's having to take care of several city departments. He was awfully proud of a particular airplane that he showed me pictures of. But then also in discussion with the media, I went and visited one of the local media outlets, and he said while, yeah, the services were pretty good, they could probably stand to be a lot better as far as relationships between local media and the police department. And he put a lot of that on the fact that he did have, or would have to go through a PIO that has to oversee several departments within the city, and there's not really a direct contact into the police department. At least that was in his mind. So, you know, that might be something to kind of think about on down the road as you're able to, is to look for a contact within the police department that would be a direct contact with the media to provide more timely information. Talked a little bit about traffic. You've got a really strong traffic enforcement program through the use of different types of selective traffic enforcement strategies. You know, saturation patrols, you do the DUI checkpoints at time, and to try and cut down on the number of traffic accidents and fatalities that you have. But of course, when the inevitable happens, I also saw that you have a very strong and well-trained reconstruction team to work those types of accidents when it becomes necessary. The final thing is I want to discuss with you is the property and evidence. Jim already kind of mentioned this a little bit, but property and evidence is one of those types of things that will come back to bite you in the rear end real quick if you don't mind your P's and Q's on that. It'll get a department and a chief in trouble quick, about as quick as anything if evidence and property are not handled properly. Your property room had very good security in it. Record keeping was very well maintained. We gave your property custodian was able to pull up information on different cases that she had stored in there and go right to them without any problems. I think you already mentioned the car issue, so we won't have to go there. But But that's pretty much what I had as far as my part of the assessment goes.
Mentioning property and evidence, it's small, but let me tell you, the woman that you have assigned there is very detailed, and that is critical. When I went to my organization as chief, I did a 100% inventory with everything in the organization, including money. We were missing, from an inventory standpoint, we were missing a shotgun. And nobody could find it until I said Internal Affairs sought a criminal investigation, or at least an internal investigation and maybe a criminal investigation, and we found that a retiree had taken it home. But missing one item can get this gentleman on the front page of the paper. So that's a critical area, but I feel like you got a good person there. You know, I'm going to say this. Yes, you're in a small police facility, but that's all you got now. And I'm going to tell you, I can tell a lot about an organization by looking at the facility. Yes, you're in a small facility, but it is clean and it's organized. I've been in, you know how you really tell about an organization? You walk in and you go in the restroom. If it's a dump and water is all over the counter and toilet paper is all over the floor, you can tell something about an organization. Now, I use the fire chief's bathroom most of the time. So fire, you got a good restroom. And you got a good organization. But my facilities in Newport News were awful. But, you know, it's in his strategic plan. It's on the desk of the manager. You'll get there. But that's a huge capital improvement. I mean, that's not cheap. So, you know, keep what you got in great shape. And the assistant chief and I talked about future plans and ways to build for the future. So have a vision, keep it in your strategic plan, and you'll get there. Equipment. I can tell a heck of a lot about a police department by looking at their vehicles. You ever been to a city and seen police cars with no hubcaps or a missing hubcap? What did you think? First impression, what did you think about the police department? Well, number one, I can tell you I didn't see any missing hubcaps. But I saw clean cars, and I'm sure the Take On Car program has something to do with that. But, you know, I know for a fact your chief is looking down the road for what the agency needs. And money doesn't grow on trees, so he just can't pick the dollar bills and off the tree to make it happen. But it's on his mind. It's in your strategic plan, and that's critical. So don't dwell on the negatives. Dwell on the positives as you're moving forward. I didn't have the PIO chapter, so I don't know how you run your PIO. I know you have a city PIO, but you need a point of contact or someone trained in that area in the police department, because when the crap is hitting the fan, the media is going to be there. You ain't got time to wait for somebody to get there. And they're going to want to listen to a person in uniform in many cases. So that's something, an area you might look at. Sad to say, I had 5 people in PIO, and every afternoon when I left work, there were 3 TV station towers in the front of the building. But you're not there, and you don't want to be there. One thing I'm going to suggest to you, and I know how reports work. I was the chief, I didn't do reports. Assistant chief did reports, the captain did reports, lieutenants did reports, sergeants did reports. When you do a report, especially for CALEA, don't look at last year's report and just fill in numbers. That's cookie cutting. Look at the report. You know what numbers you're going to need to put in there, and make that report reflect you. If I read a number of reports, and some of these reports almost look like the date was changed. So don't get into that. When your chief delegates to you to do a report, it's your report. You're you're making, it's going to be his report, so you got to think about that. But kind of be creative. And just don't make every report look this way, because that's going to get you in trouble with a really hard-nosed assessor coming in. So they're pretty much our comments. We said in the beginning, Chief, I think you've got a good organization here. You've got good people. Obviously, the community has told us that you have a good department. Your fellow workers, the fire chief says you guys have an excellent working relationship. So my job now will be to go home, put together a report, and send it to Kalia, and then it will be, the commissioners will review it, and then you will go before the commission and ask questions. I can tell you this, there are no negative issues going to be in the report, but I will report what I saw and what the facts are. Does anybody have any questions of us? Feel good about yourself. I didn't mean to jump in and answer. I just didn't see any hands. Anybody have any questions of us? I've shared with a couple people here. You actually got one at the FBI Academy from one of my captains. So that sent the message to me how that captain thought about a particular coin. I had a leadership coin. I still have that leadership coin. I don't lead an organization anymore, but I still have the coin, and I believe in it. And on one side of the coin, there's a tall, sharp police officer. And the words that surround it are trust, communications, teamwork, care, and vision. Now think about those words as a leader. And the leadership of the Monroe Police Department is sitting in this room. If your people don't trust you, internally or externally, you've got a problem. Because you won't communicate. And if you don't communicate, you're not going to have a team. And if you don't have teamwork, any organization is in trouble. You also have to care about those that you serve, but care about your fellow workers and the organization. And you got to have a vision. Monroe, and I know you have a strategic plan, and you just put a new one in place from 2016 to 2020. If you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. If the manager doesn't know what your needs and what your strategic issues are, he can't help you. And then on the other side, there was a giraffe. And when I took that giraffe to my people, to my leadership team, all the TAC team, you know, they're lions and tigers, they started laughing. But the giraffe was the symbol of our leadership. And I actually took a book that my friend wrote, which was called I've Always Looked Up to Giraffes. If you stop and think about it. And on that side of the coin, there was Newport News Police. We stand head and shoulders above the crowd. Your organization is a giraffe. When I look around you, and there are a number of other organizations, police departments in this county, you want to stand head and shoulders above the crowd. You want to be the organization that the others looked up to. And I saw that at the range yesterday. Another organization, police department was there. They look up to the Monroe Police Department. A giraffe doesn't have to eat off the ground. They can get fresh fruit. They reach out because they got long necks. You want to reach out. You want to have a great vision, and they can see a person a mile away. They got big ears. And you know, that used to be the #1 negative in policing. We were so much into command and control, we forgot to listen. You've got to listen to the people, internally and externally. Giraffes are the symbol of friendship in Africa, and you want your organization to be the symbol of friendship. They're all different, and if you look around the room, we're all different. Some of us got big bellies, I think I'm the only one in the room that has, oh, there's another one with white hair. But we're all different. They're aggressive. They can kick in 4 different directions. There's time that you need to be aggressive in things. I'm not saying use of force, but you need to be aggressive. They're tireless. They only sleep 30 minutes a day. I don't suggest that. There were some days as chief, I thought I only slept 30 minutes a day. They have a big heart. Their heart is bigger than an elephant's heart. It's about 30, 40 pounds. And they got big caring eyes. The next time you go to the zoo or see a giraffe, you're not going to hear them saying much, but they'll look at you with big caring eyes. So a few little analogies with the giraffe, and I'll use the story. I went to the range one day, and I went into one of the firearms instructor's office, and he was on the TAC team as well. And he had a lion eating a giraffe. Well, we had a discussion on, you know what, that lion has to get on the giraffe's back to eat. So it wasn't a true picture. And a giraffe can run 30 to 40 miles an hour. They can get places very quickly. And that's talking about change. You've got to change quickly in today's world. So we had a little discussion that I never saw. A lion eating a giraffe. And the people that got my coin all had it sitting on their desk. So I think you are giraffes. And you should be proud of yourself. This is not an easy process. Thank the team that put it together. They do a heck of a lot of work behind the scenes. They make it happen. And it's not an easy process. And when we leave here today, it begins the next cycle. You can't give up. You can't lay down. Chief?
Well, I think you summed it up best. We'll be happy to see you leave. I don't mean that in any disrespect, but Chief Fox, Lieutenant Hubbard have been very, very tough on us. I mean that in a kind of professional way, but they checked everything that we have doing and have been doing, and we met the seal of approval. I didn't hear anything that we won't be too hard to defend in Baltimore in a few months, but thank y'all, because it starts with you. I'm not out there at 2 o'clock in the morning answering calls. I'm not out there the one responding to all these problems and dealing with, and it's you. It's not me. I just try to provide you with the equipment, make sure that you have the resources you need. So for what he said, he was talking about you. And I don't want you to think that I ever take that for granted, and I truly appreciate that, and I respect you, because I trust you to make the decisions to make us better. And you surround yourself with good people, and I'm only going to be as good as you are. And I appreciate that, because this is our first one. It could have been a perfect storm. It could have been very, very challenging, but a lot of y'all worked hard on this. Nancy and Ginger, thank you. I appreciate everything you did. Milford, thank you for being here. I don't know what you really did, but I appreciate you being here. It's time to laugh now, Milford. I pick on you a little bit, all right? So get ready to leave. You're going to take them back to Charlotte. We're going to have a good time this evening. But Terry, thank you. I think what y'all heard with the property and the way we've been strict with the officers on the uniforms and the things, that there's a reason. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do for everything that y'all have done to make this process successful. Thank you. I think as Chief Fox said, once they leave, we keep on doing what we're doing. It's not reinventing the wheel, but just remaining true to who you are and what we believe in. So for that, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do on a daily basis. These gentlemen's comments just reiterate that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all your hard work, and let's keep doing what makes Monroe Police, okay?
If I could say one last thing, Chief. The leadership team is in the room here. It's important that you be ambassadors to the process. This is a process that makes you want to talk. You're not just saying you do it. We come in to make sure that you were doing it. Now, the troops on the street at 3 o'clock in the morning, or even right now, don't understand the process as much as the leadership team should understand the process. So sell the process. Be an ambassador to the process, because I've said this 3 times, I know, this week. Out of 24,000 police departments, there are less than 2,000 that are accredited. And the accreditation is best practices. It's what you're supposed to be doing. And you know how quick any size organization can get in trouble and become the front page or the lead story on CNN. You know, many years ago, even in an organization where I was with 600, my chance of being on CNN was 0. When something was happening in my city, I would get personal phone calls from Fox News and CNN and didn't even have a clue who I was talking to. And I would refer them to the PIO. So that same thing can happen here. It's happening around the nation. So, my last words, be safe in a very tough world. Thank you.
Also, folks, I'd like to thank our city manager, my boss for being here, and assistant city manager, Brian Bourne, Mr. Pace, Brian Bourne, and Chief Fowler. Chief Fowler has been very supportive of me through this process, so don't ever take that for granted. Our working relationship with the fire department, they've been really good to us. I know we pick and cut up with them, but when we need them, they're there. And so I just wanted to thank those three gentlemen for coming in today. Don Mitchell was here earlier with Energy Services, but he had to leave. And you have the support of the other departments within the city. Thank y'all, and have a safe trip home.